Hello there, my name's Ian Mitchell and I'm a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, and today we're going to talk about holding sprint retrospectives with Kanban. Now the first thing to consider is the difference between a sprint review and a sprint retrospective. During a sprint review, the Scrum team and any stakeholders who've been invited there by the product owner will inspect and adapt the sprint increment, the product increment, and the product backlog. During a sprint retrospective, on the other hand, the team itself will inspect and adapt their implementation of Scrum, their process in effect, their way of working. Now when a team implements Kanban as a strategy, this has implications for the way a sprint retrospective will be conducted. The things that they consider during a sprint retrospective will not necessarily be the same things that they would consider with stakeholders during a sprint review. To understand what that difference is, let's leave Kanban out of the picture for a moment and just think about Scrum. Imagine, if you will, that during a sprint, a development team incurred a certain amount of technical debt. Well, if they did, that might not be something that stakeholders during a sprint review might wish to hear about. They may not particularly care. What they care about is their experience with the product. How well is it functioning for them? But any technical debt that's been incurred by the development team would, in effect, be left for the development team themselves to sort out. That's the sort of thing that the team would try to get to grips with during a sprint retrospective. They'd look at their way of working. What can we do to start paying off some of this technical debt? That's the sort of thing that the team itself might consider. So when a Scrum team implements Kanban as a strategy, it's that sort of consideration that can drive the things that they talk about during the retrospective. And there's a kind of technical debt that may be of considerable interest to them, and that is flow debt. You see, when a team follows Kanban, they're really going to be focused much more on flow than they are on the delivery of features. So if items are stagnating in progress, if they've taken on an item and they've started working on it and it's there for days, weeks, perhaps running into months, that's the sort of thing they're going to want to know about and to control during a retrospective. So during a sprint retrospective, they might look at a cumulative flow diagram and they would consider, well, what's the approximate average cycle time and what's the actual average cycle time that we're measuring item by item. The difference between the two wouldn't be something that stakeholders would care about in a sprint review. They're not going to care about approximate average cycle times or average cycle times or the difference between them. But a Scrum team would, because that difference is going to indicate how much flow debt the team is incurring. So there are differences between a sprint review and a sprint retrospective, and when a team implements Kanban, those differences are still there. It's really much more about the process that the team is following rather than the product or the service which they're delivering to stakeholders. And as always, when a team implements Kanban as a strategy, they're going to be focused much more on flow than they are on features.